Hi, my name is Chelsea Harding, and this is my Summer Session 1 Special Projects video essay for Tammy Kinsey. As you can see, it's titled Welcome to Sunnydale, Introduction to the Buffyverse. I've taken a few film classes at this point, and in many of them, the television show Buffy the Vampire Slayer has been mentioned as being really important to film and television, but I didn't really understand why because I was a little under the age bracket when it first came out, and I never really got into it as it premiered and played on television. So for this project, I decided to take a deeper look into what makes Buffy so important. When I first started looking into doing research on Buffy, I didn't really know where to begin. Obviously, I went to Google and I just typed in, Buffy and saw what came up. And the first thing that came up was an article entitled "The New Wave of TV Women." This article talked about how women on TV today have many strengths, but their strengths are often tied to weaknesses. And if you take their weaknesses away, their strengths disappear as well. For example, in Nurse Jackie, I believe it is, she's a very, very talented nurse, but she, I think, is a pill popper. And if you were to take away her medication, she would no longer be the magnificent nurse she is. This may sound familiar to House, Dr. Gregory House in the television show House MD, which is one of my favorites actually. And the contrast between these two characters in the article is that it's more understandable in the male version than it is in the female version. This article didn't really talk about Buffy actually, but thinking of these themes, is Buffy different? Can she have it all without having her be able to get rid of her weaknesses and still be able to have her strengths, or is she similar? And in a couple of episodes, for instance, the first one that comes to mind, she's trying out for the cheerleading team, and Giles is telling her not to because she has responsibilities, but she says, I just want something normal, something simple. And so she tries out for the cheerleading team anyway. Something that I think is different between Buffy and the other characters listed in this article is that Buffy takes on her responsibilities and accepts that maybe she can't have everything. And I don't think that if you were to take away her weaknesses, or I don't really think that these things could be called weaknesses. Sometimes there's trade-offs, and the things that her faults aren't really her fault. She was chosen to be the Slayer. She didn't pick to be the Slayer, but she takes on the responsibility. And in some of these other television shows, they have these great qualities, but they're lacking in another way in order to maintain their abilities, and I think that sets Buffy apart. One of the first articles that I also came across was called 10 Episodes That Show How Buffy the Vampire Slayer Blew Up Genre TV. This article went into detail about, some of the cool points about Buffy and how it doesn't hold to any one genre, and then listed 10 episodes that show these factors. And I used these 10 episodes as a starting point. They were the first 10 that I went over in trying to figure out where to start. And the article talks about how in Buffy there are comic, as in Marvel and DC comic themes, horror themes, comedy themes, women's studies themes, and all of these themes pull together to make one really awesome Buffy. But Buffy can change at any time and pull from any of them, and it just seems natural. It doesn't seem out of place. The first and most useful website that I found was called Slayage, the journal of the Buffy Studies Association, and this website had just a ton of links of articles about Buffy. So I sifted through it and I found a couple of really great topics that I'm going to discuss. The first topic that I'd like to discuss is Buffy and authority. And here are 2 links of articles from the Slayage website that talk about this topic. The first thing that the articles point out are that there are no parents. The only parent that you really see periodically is Joyce Summers, who is Buffy's mother. You see Willow's mom for one episode with Moo. Another point that the articles point out is that there are more authority at schools than at home. However, the authority at school often misuses its power for good, or those people are evil. For example, Principal Snyder, who ends up being like a demon, and Maggie Walsh, when Buffy goes to college, who is the leader of the initiative and ends up trying to build like a Franken demon. The police are rarely present, and when they are, they're submissive. For instance, Buffy kills her stepfather in an episode entitled Ted, and the police come and they're going to accuse Buffy, but she runs away, and when she comes back, suddenly the whole thing has blown over so easily. And in real life, usually you can't just run away and then come back and everything's gone. So authority is not very present. However, this makes sense for a television show like this. What kind of good and normal parents would let their kids run around slaying demons? Normally, my mom wouldn't let me do that. So the lack of authority makes the action in the television show possible. Another article talks about Moo and what kind of an influence that makes. So to fill you in on the storyline, Buffy's mom finally finds out that she's a slayer and decides to follow her around one day, where in this particular day, they find 2 children dead. So Buffy's mom talks to other parents at the school, and they start this organization called Moo, Mothers Opposed to the Occult. By the end of this episode, which is called Gingerbread, the Moo has Willow and Amy and Buffy at a stake, and they're burning all of the occult books from the library, and they're planning to kill their daughters as a punishment for being part of the supernatural. This, in my opinion, is a statement about how the kids are trying to solve these problems of demonic presence in the society, but when parents find out that it's there, when they have been overlooking it for all of these years, they think they can do a better job, and they're trying to take over with more rational and reasonable actions. However, in the end, they're going to kill their kids to get rid of the evil when their kids were fighting the evil in the first place. So that seems less rational to me, but from their standpoint, it must seem more rational. The final topic I'd like to talk about in this particular video essay is the relationship between Buffy and Spike. From the very beginning of the show, when Spike first shows up in School Hard, he's very bad, and he's made out to seem like, a really bad villain. But throughout the course of the show, he's turned into a bit of a fool and becomes more humanized through the series, and he goes back and forth between helping and going against Buffy. And in the end, he ends up assisting Buffy in her final battle. Spike's presence in the show can also give a lot of light onto the moral values of the characters. An article said, one of the articles listed on this slide say that Buffy doesn't kill Spike because he is not always a threat, and he can be controlled, and he provides as a utility for information that can help her slay more powerful and more dangerous villains. The show has a very, very structured moral value system that is pretty consistent throughout the entire series. And when characters go against the moral values, they are not without guilt. And for instance, again, to bring up the episode Ted where Buffy kills her stepfather, she thinks that he is a danger to her and her mother, but she believes him to be a human. So when she kills him, she feels bad about it because she's not supposed to kill humans, and it's like a relief to her when she finds out that he was in fact a robot. In conclusion to my research, I have watched a lot of episodes of Buffy at this point, and it's becoming more and more interesting. And there are a lot of themes that are relative to everyday life, and there's so much to it that there's no way I could discuss the whole thing in one video essay. But I've enjoyed my time watching the show and reading the articles, and had I had more than 6 weeks to work on this project, that still wouldn't be enough.